Jack here, JBF Music and Guitar Lessons, back with one of these critique videos for you. So if you like these things, let me know with a like and a comment. If you don't, fire away, but if you let me know what specifically you don't like, I can take it on board. So the kind of feedback I had from the handful of ones I've done before, I've taken that into account, so I'm trying to play with the format a bit here. Essentially, I'm looking for clips to transcribe and put into my signature licks videos. I'll put a little I link into it up there whenever it's live, and I thought I might as well just kind of document the process and what videos I'm looking at, that kind of thing. So the guitarist in question today is Marty Friedman. I think this is going to be much more of an analysis than a critique, given this high level of ability. I've got a couple of videos up here, so yeah, let's just jump into it. This first one I think is from the Essential Marty Friedman. It's simply called Heavy Metal Solo. I think I've seen this one years ago, and I think it will be in glorious potato quality for all of us to have a bit of nostalgic joy. Let's go for it. Okay, I've definitely seen this one before because I remember the backing sounded a little bit like Highway Star, the Deep Purple song, so that's coming into my memory. Straight off the bat, you've got exotic sounds. You know it's Marty Friedman. So another side note, he's building the dynamics here, so rather than kind of going balls to the wall and bending that highest note with as much vibrato as possible, he's kind of keeping things a bit more kind of reined in for him anyway, starting off in the lower register as well and working his way up the fretboard. A good idea. Okay, that was nice. So, just as I say that, of course, he brings out a flash flurry of notes, resolving it to what sounds like the root here. I've not analysed this, but it sounded like, so we're probably in F sharp minor here, I'd guess. Okay, that's like quintessential Marty Friedman. So he's starting off with this kind of like almost bluesy inspired rock lick. Then he's adding in these cool Japanese kind of Southeast Asian flavours, which of course, because you're using the pentatonic scale for the bluesy rock stuff, and for that you can blend it in, and he does it so seamlessly, it's amazing. And then just some really cool chromatic stuff to round up the lick, and again, just moving a huge way across the fretboard with very little position shifting, or like, you know, awkward looking position shifts. So beautiful, beautiful phrasing. Okay, so there we had a change in the backing. It sounds to me like it's probably gone to the Phrygian Dominant. It's almost got kind of like a surf rock sound there. And because we got the slight, it doesn't sound like a key change, but it's maybe more of a shift of a tonal center. What it means is you can explore kind of different sounds in a different scale without it sounding too repetitive. Not that I mean he doesn't have a huge guitar vocabulary, but yeah, it's going to show off even more. Right, if you're familiar with the channel, you probably recognise that as the Hirajoshi scale. I've done a content on that before, which I'll link up to with the eye up there. He uses that scale a lot. It's a traditional Japanese one, just a really beautiful scale. It's kind of almost evil, but also quite kind of mournful as well. Really, really love the scale. So I think he's played that thing at least twice now, because that's popping into my memory. So you can hear like certain aspects of his playing, like phrasings and mannerisms. When he's improvising like this, I think he's improvising, which just makes the whole thing even more amazing. But yeah, you can get a really good flavour for someone's idiosyncrasies by listening out for the phrases like that you hear repeated. And not often, but you know, enough that it's clearly part of their kind of regular vocabulary, I suppose. That little move there, that's quite a Jeff Beck thing. Again, that's a kind of surf guitar sound as well. It's that typical Marty Friedman thing of bending an out note into key in just the coolest way. So 10 points if you spotted the Hirajoshi scale the second time there. There was another one. And again, we've got that key change. I'm pretty sure that is a Phrygian Dominant thing going on there. Just has that kind of slightly more metal edge to it, doesn't it? Nice little diminished run there as well. If you want to know why diminished works over Phrygian Dominant, I've covered that in my Angry lesson, which I'll link to with the eye up there. So that's cool. He used the Phrygian Dominant section to use like diminished scales and bending in these out notes and kind of more exotic scales as well. And then when it's gone back to the kind of standard backing, he's gone for his rock licks to be like, yeah, because it makes them pop more when you've done the kind of tension, the more kind of tense out there ones. Great example of some tension release going on, really. That expression is priceless. That does not look like a guy that's... It looks like a guy that's just woken up or rolled out of bed and done sitting at his morning coffee. It doesn't look like someone that's just ripped that amazing solo. It's just... Guys like him where it's so second nature is really mind-boggling. I think with Marty Friedman, if I remember correctly, he kind of like... his formative years were pretty much being a live musician, so I think almost like before he could play, he was like kind of part of the party scene, just kind of doing bands and gigs and stuff like that. And it comes across in his playing. It's a bit like Guthrie Govan. It's almost like breathing or talking to them. It just seems so natural and fluid. Cool. So there's loads of stuff even in that. I mean, that was probably like less than 2 minutes, and there's just so much to mine from that one clip. So this is why it's sometimes a wee bit overwhelming kind of doing these signature licks videos, because they've just got such a, particularly with YouTube, it's amazing, but there is a slight option paralysis. So if there's any videos of the guitarists I'm doing these on you think I should check out, put them down in the comments. Specifically if you're like, oh, I really like this section, or I really like what they're doing here, it would be cool to investigate that. Anyway, this one I think is a bit more melodic. It's an EMG TV one, I think. So yeah, let's fire into this. Something I will say about Marty Friedman is his tone's been really quite consistent over the years as well. Whether you like it or not is a different matter. I think it cuts really well in a mix. It's something that I would have maybe a bit of difficulty playing with myself if I heard it coming from the amp, because there's quite a lot of kind of fizz and treble, but that's going to help it, as I say, really cut in a mix. But if you listen to the isolated guitar tracks that people have put on from the Rust in Peace solos, and compare it to this, it's really similar. So I think why this is popping into my mind is if you look at his guitar, the body's got this really kind of rusted aesthetic going on. It's not one that I particularly like. I just think about like the kind of texture of rust, and I don't really like that. But I'm guessing it's one that he does, and for me there's a kind of commonality between his tone and the kind of rusted aesthetic, which is kind of essentially if I could like put his guitar tone to some extent anyway into visual representation, that guitar is pretty much it. The little finger flick there. So he uses his fingers for playing a lot more kind of post-Megadeth than he did then. It's neither here nor there, but it's a nice thing to be able to do, to use your nails to flick a string. What I will say as well, I don't know if he's using a ton of like noise gate to stop the excess string noise, but because he's got quite an unusual playing technique and doesn't kind of mute the strings in a conventional way that a lot of us would, he's either using very minimal gain or he's got pretty effective noise gating going on. I'd guess it's probably noise gating, because it sounds like he's picking relatively lightly with not like an excessive amount of gain, but a fair amount. I could be totally wrong, so correct me in the comments if you can. Just really nice melodic playing. The thing about this, when you start to analyse the chords more and you appreciate the notes he's picking out the chords to accentuate them or create tension with them, that's when you can kind of get a, without sounding too self-indulgent, a greater appreciation for this type of playing if it doesn't float your boat immediately. It's just lovely controlled vibrato as well, brilliant. So I did want to speak during that, but it was too lovely to interrupt. It was incredibly vocal playing there, so by that I mean he's varying the vibrato. It's not just like the same type and speed with the music. Some of it's kind of in time, some of it's out of time. He's varying the speed. It's all very intentional though, and the variation between the vibrato types are what give it kind of that soul and character. There's an interesting thing happened there where the note kind of died and came back, so I don't know if that's some trick he's got going on or a post-production thing. But yeah, that was really beautiful. It's kind of very Beatlesy or quite kind of cinematic, maybe like an anime or something. I mean, he does live in Japan, so I imagine that music has quite an inspiration on him, or influence, I should say. There's also something doubling the melody, I think, an octave higher, which is making it pop a bit more, which is really a nice compositional trick. Side note more than anything else, but it looks like he's got some of the frets scalloped to different degrees here, which I've only just noticed. If you know anything about that, fire it down in the comments. I don't know if there's any logic behind that or if it's just because he can. There's something really interesting that's going on with his EQ here, where it almost sounds like there's a wah or there's like a kind of boost in the mid-range. Now, maybe someone's like popped on this little yellow pedal back there. I don't know if someone stamped it on in the background. It's fairly unlikely. It might just be an EQ thing he's done with his guitar, but I don't know if you noticed that there it started to kind of honk a bit more. It's a great way of getting a solo to cut. You kind of pick frequencies that are quite mid-rangey. They're quite exposed, so you don't have, there's not much room for error, but it will really help you cut in a mix. Okay, so we've got just a nice building to a crescendo here, and I imagine he's going to take it back down kind of dynamically for the outro. I expect it to end a bit more triumphantly, but it's going for a slightly somber minor ending here. Nice touch. Okay, I'm going to have to analyse this vibrato more and try and steal some more tricks from that, because it was just some beautiful playing there. Alright, so one of the suggestions I had was to demonstrate these techniques that we come across in a bit more detail, so I'm doing that. I've put them at the end of the video so they don't interrupt the kind of overall flow of the analysis or critique. But we're looking at this pre-bend thing. So this would work in the key of F sharp minor. You take the 3rd fret on the G string and you're going to bend that semitone. Return it to pitch. Then hammer on the 4th fret. So you got that bend. Return it, hammer. You're going to pull off to the 2nd fret. And then play the 4th fret down on the D string. And a bit slower. So as I mentioned, this goes over an F sharp minor backing, so let's have a slightly closer look at that. It goes... a little bit slower. So we've got an F sharp to an A5 to a B, back to the A5, F sharp again, up to G sharp, A, back to the G sharp. So because of these chords, we're technically in Dorian, F sharp Dorian, so your scale, that sound, but you'll probably find the Aeolian licks will also work. Phrygian will probably be a little bit too tense. But what Marty Friedman often does is plays a C sharp Hirajoshi scale over this. I covered this before like I mentioned, but here's a different fingering for you, one I've only kind of come across from looking at these videos, so we'll run through that. Might be a wee bit of tune, so I do apologise, and I'll run through that a little bit more slowly. And coming back down. Cool, so the second part of the backing where it goes to Phrygian Dominant, I think, is something like this. So you could get away with playing Phrygian over that as well, it's going to sound just great. Example of the Phrygian Dominant scale, you've got this, would be a way of playing it. So something that Marty Friedman might do with that scale. So another thing I hadn't really thought of before until, again, I started kind of looking at these licks, you can actually get away with playing the Hirajoshi scale. If I move up here, you might recognize it from before. Same thing here. And that will work over this C sharp kind of Phrygian Dominant thing as well. Will give a cool exotic sound. Alright, well hopefully there's been at least some bits of useful information in there for you guys. If you've got any questions about things or comments, fire them down there. Yeah, do the whole subscribe and notification thing. I'm sure you guys know the drill by now. It's all really helpful to the channel. But yeah, let's take it easy guys and never get much.